In this episode, we turn to something that sits at the center of every successful security effort, even though it is sometimes treated like a soft skill instead of a core management responsibility. Communications and reporting are how an information security program explains risk, shows progress, earns trust, asks for support, and helps the rest of the organization understand what security is doing and why it matters. For a brand new learner, this is a very important topic because strong security work can still fail if it is communicated poorly, reported too late, or explained in language that decision-makers cannot use. A security team may identify important risks, detect troubling patterns, or improve major controls, but those achievements only become organizational value when the right people hear the right message in a clear and timely way. That is why this matters so much in the Certified Information Security Manager, CISM, mindset. CISM is not only about understanding threats and controls. It is also about making sure security information reaches people in a form that helps them act, decide, and lead responsibly. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is a companion to our course companion books. The first book is about the exam and provides detailed information on how to pass it best. The second book is a Kindle-only ebook that contains 1,000 flashcards that can be used on your mobile device or Kindle. Check them both out at cyberauthor.me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A good place to begin is with the basic difference between communication and reporting, because they are closely related but not exactly the same. Communication is the broader activity of sharing information, shaping understanding, setting expectations, coordinating action, and maintaining trust across the organization. Reporting is a more structured form of communication in which information is organized, delivered, and often repeated on a regular basis so leaders and teams can review performance, risk, and program status over time. Beginners sometimes think reporting is just sending charts to executives or writing updates after an incident, but it is much bigger than that. Reporting can include risk summaries, control status, compliance concerns, vendor issues, awareness results, incident trends, project updates, and decisions that need attention from leadership. Communication includes all of that, but it also includes conversations before problems grow, explanations that help teams understand requirements, and the daily effort of making security understandable instead of mysterious. A mature program needs both. It needs structured reporting, and it needs steady communication that keeps security connected to real business activity. One of the most important lessons in this area is that not every audience needs the same message, the same level of detail, or the same style of explanation. A frontline analyst, a system owner, a department manager, a privacy leader, and a board member all care about security in different ways because their roles, responsibilities, and decision authority are not the same. If the security program sends the same deeply technical message to everyone, most of the audience will either feel overwhelmed or assume the message does not apply to them. If the program sends only high-level slogans, the people who must actually manage the work will not have enough detail to respond properly. Effective communication begins by asking who needs this information, what decisions they make, what they already understand, and what action or awareness the message is supposed to create. That audience awareness is not cosmetic. It is the difference between communication that informs and communication that merely exists. Security leaders who understand their audiences can translate the same core issue into operational detail for one group, business impact for another, and strategic significance for senior leadership without losing the underlying truth. This is especially important because security programs usually communicate upward, outward, and across the organization at the same time. Upward communication often goes to senior executives, risk committees, or the board, and it usually focuses on business impact, major risks, trend direction, resource needs, and whether the program is aligned with organizational priorities. Across the business, communication reaches managers, project leaders, vendors, legal teams, human resources, finance, and operational staff who need to coordinate with security as part of daily work. Downward communication reaches security personnel and supporting teams who need clarity about priorities, expectations, incident responsibilities, and changes in process. Each of these directions matters because a security program cannot operate well if leadership lacks visibility, peer functions feel confused or surprised, or internal teams do not understand the plan. Strong communication is therefore not just about speaking often. It is about making sure information moves through the organization in useful ways and does not become trapped inside the security function. When that movement is weak, security becomes isolated. When it is strong, the program becomes more trusted, more coordinated, and much more capable of influencing outcomes. A major part of reporting is deciding what actually deserves attention, because an endless stream of disconnected facts rarely helps anyone lead better. Beginners sometimes imagine that strong reporting means sharing as much information as possible so nothing is hidden, but too much unfiltered information can create confusion instead of clarity. Good reporting helps the audience focus on matters that are significant to risk, operations, compliance, resilience, decision-making, or the long-term health of the program. That might include control gaps, major incidents, rising vulnerability backlogs, unresolved audit issues, vendor concerns, awareness weaknesses, project risks, or evidence that an important initiative is improving security posture. It may also include positive movement, such as stronger response times, better coverage, or reduced exposure in a high-risk area. The purpose of reporting is not to create drama or to flood leaders with technical detail. The purpose is to help them understand what matters, why it matters, how serious it is, and whether some action, support, or oversight is needed. Strong reporting is selective, disciplined, and closely tied to the real questions leaders must answer. The quality of security communication depends heavily on clarity, timing, and context. A message can be technically correct and still be ineffective if it arrives too late, uses vague language, or assumes the audience already understands the background. Clear communication explains the issue in terms that fit the audience without weakening the meaning. Timely communication ensures that important information reaches people while there is still time to respond rather than after the issue has already grown more costly or disruptive. Context matters because numbers and statements by themselves often do not tell a useful story. If a report says there were more incidents this quarter, leaders need to know whether that reflects greater threat activity, stronger detection, a change in business operations, or a weakening of controls. If a team says patching performance dropped, it helps to explain whether this was caused by staffing limits, system complexity, vendor delay, or competing operational demands. Good communication does not just pass along data. It adds enough explanation that the audience can understand what the information means and how seriously they should treat it. Another critical skill in security reporting is communicating risk without creating either panic or false comfort. This balance can be hard for new learners to picture because security issues often sound urgent by nature, and it may feel safer to emphasize worst-case outcomes in order to gain attention. But if every message sounds like a crisis, people may stop listening carefully, while overly calm communication can make real risks appear smaller than they are. Strong security leaders describe risk in a way that is honest, proportionate, and tied to business consequences that the audience can recognize. They explain the potential effect on operations, customers, legal obligations, finances, reputation, or resilience rather than relying only on technical labels or dramatic language. They also communicate uncertainty responsibly by saying what is known, what is still being assessed, and what decisions may need to wait for better information. This approach builds credibility because it shows discipline instead of exaggeration. Organizations trust security reporting more when it reflects judgment rather than alarm, and when it helps leaders think clearly instead of react emotionally to language that offers more heat than insight. Metrics often play an important role in reporting, but they have to be used carefully if they are going to support good decisions. A dashboard full of numbers can look impressive while still telling the audience very little about actual security condition or program health. Useful metrics help leaders understand whether work is happening, whether risks are changing, and whether important controls are performing the way they should over time. A key performance indicator, KPI, may help show how effectively a process is being carried out, while a key risk indicator, KRI, may help signal whether exposure is rising or moving outside acceptable boundaries. Even so, the value of these measures depends on interpretation. If a phishing report count rises, that could mean employees are more alert, attacks are increasing, or both. If incident numbers fall, that could mean security has improved, or it could mean detection is weaker. Good communication therefore treats metrics as tools for understanding rather than decoration for slides. The real goal is not to show that the program can count things. It is to help people see patterns, ask better questions, and make more informed decisions about what comes next. Incident communication deserves special attention because it places the security program under intense pressure and often reveals whether reporting habits are mature or improvised. During an incident, people want fast answers, but early facts are often incomplete, changing, or partly unverified. This creates a communication challenge because leaders, legal teams, technical responders, business owners, and sometimes outside parties all need information. Yet premature or careless statements can create confusion and make the situation harder to manage. Strong incident communication is disciplined. It explains what is known, what is being investigated, what actions are underway, and what the immediate priorities are, while avoiding speculation that may later prove incorrect. It also follows a reporting path that has already been considered in advance, so the organization is not inventing communication rules in the middle of a stressful event. For beginners, this is an important insight. Incident reporting is not only about speed. It is about accuracy, coordination, audience awareness, and protecting the organization from further harm that can come from poor messaging as easily as from the technical event itself. Security communication is also essential outside of formal incidents because many of the most valuable conversations happen long before a crisis begins. A program may need to explain why a new control is being introduced, why a vendor issue deserves business attention, why a project creates emerging risk, or why a recurring exception process is starting to weaken accountability. These messages often determine whether the organization responds early or waits until a much larger problem forces action. This is one reason effective security leaders build relationships across the business instead of appearing only when something goes wrong. When people already understand the security team's role, reporting becomes easier because the message arrives inside a relationship of trust rather than as a sudden warning from a distant function. Ongoing communication also helps security become part of planning and decision-making rather than just part of remediation. That shift is extremely valuable in a mature program. It means security is not only reporting damage after the fact. It is helping the business anticipate issues, understand trade-offs, and make stronger decisions before exposure turns into loss. Regular reporting cycles can help create discipline, predictability, and accountability across the information security program. When leaders know when to expect updates and what types of topics will be covered, the program becomes easier to oversee and compare over time. Monthly operational reviews, quarterly leadership briefings, committee updates, project risk reports, and post-incident summaries can all serve different purposes depending on the organization's size and maturity. What matters most is that the cadence fits the real need for oversight and does not become a ritual disconnected from decision-making. A regular report that nobody uses is not a sign of maturity. It is a sign that the reporting process has drifted away from value. Strong reporting cycles are linked to governance. They help track commitments, show whether issues are improving or stagnating, and create a record of what leadership knew, what actions were recommended, and what decisions followed. In security management, documentation and reporting cadence work together. They make the program more transparent, more reviewable, and less dependent on memory or informal conversation when important questions arise later. Bad news is one of the hardest things for any security leader to communicate, yet it is also one of the moments when trust is either strengthened or damaged most sharply. A weak program may hide problems, soften language until meaning disappears, or delay uncomfortable reporting in the hope that the issue will resolve quietly. That instinct is understandable, but it usually makes things worse because leaders lose time, surprises grow larger, and the security function begins to look less credible. Strong communication about bad news does not mean reckless disclosure or dramatic language. It means bringing forward material issues honestly, explaining their significance clearly, and pairing the message with known facts, planned response, and any decisions or support needed from others. This approach helps the audience stay focused on action rather than blame. It also shows that the security program is mature enough to be candid under pressure. Over time, that candor becomes one of the most important assets a security leader can build. Organizations may not enjoy hearing difficult news, but they usually value hearing it early, clearly, and from someone who can explain what should happen next. There are several common mistakes that weaken communications and reporting in security programs, and beginners should learn to recognize them early. One common mistake is speaking in technical language that makes sense inside the security team, but leaves business leaders unsure what the issue means for operations, customers, or strategic priorities. Another is overloading reports with too many details, which can bury the most important message under a pile of numbers, status notes, and low-priority observations. Some programs report only negative developments and never show progress, which can leave leaders feeling that security is a permanent source of problems with no visible improvement. Other programs do the opposite and emphasize success so heavily that unresolved risk fades into the background. Communication also fails when it is inconsistent, meaning one audience hears one version of the issue and another hears something materially different. These problems are not trivial. They affect decision quality, trust, funding support, and the organization's willingness to involve security early. Good communication is therefore not just presentation style. It is part of how the security program maintains influence and operational usefulness. At its best, communication helps shape culture by teaching the organization what security pays attention to, what kinds of risks matter most, and how people are expected to respond when uncertainty appears. Reporting can reinforce accountability, but it can also reinforce learning if it is used to show patterns, explain lessons, and connect incidents or weaknesses to broader improvement. When communication is thoughtful, people begin to see security as a management discipline tied to business reality rather than as a mysterious technical specialty that speaks only in alerts and warnings. This cultural effect matters because organizations rarely become more secure through policy alone. They improve when leaders, managers, and employees gradually understand how security information should move, what deserves escalation, and why early reporting and honest discussion are signs of strength rather than inconvenience. A mature security program, therefore, uses communication not only to inform, but also to normalize responsible behavior. Over time, that makes the entire enterprise more capable of noticing risk, responding to it, and treating security information as something that deserves attention rather than something that arrives only after trouble is already difficult to contain. As we close, the central lesson is that communications and reporting for the information security program are not secondary tasks added after the real work is done. They are part of the real work because they determine whether risk is understood, whether progress is visible, whether support is gained, and whether leaders across the organization can act on security information with confidence. Strong programs tailor messages to the audience, report what matters, explain context, communicate bad news honestly, and use metrics, incident updates, and regular governance cycles to create clarity instead of noise. Weak programs often fail not because they know nothing, but because they do not share what they know in a way that helps the business decide and respond. For a new CISM learner, this topic is really about making security understandable enough to influence the organization before issues become larger and harder to manage. When communication is clear, timely, disciplined, and trusted, the security program becomes more than a technical function. It becomes a reliable voice that helps the business see risk sooner, act smarter, and lead with greater confidence.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit baremetalcyber.com.